Good morning. How's everybody doing?
I can't hear you.
Man, it's like the West Coast crowd, man. You guys jet lagged.
Everybody get up. Let's go. Bring the
No,
noise.
no, don't do it. Don't do it. All right, welcome. You guys made it. This is breakout session 2216, Proven Azure Infrastructure Architectural Principles for Onboarding to Azure. We'll go ahead and do a quick intro. So my name's Phil Gibson. I started in Microsoft 10 years ago. Had slightly a little more hair than I do today. I spent some time at Docker as well, so all my container and DevOps guys, right on. And I'm joined with some partners in crime, so Junior.
Good morning. My name is Junior Sawhney. I've been with Microsoft for 8 years. Pretty much run the technology gambit from Skype, Exchange. Now did some private cloud. Some of my buddies here in that space currently with me. And now I'm a senior Azure FastTrack engineer.
Awesome.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Bowden. I'm here as a customer with Azure FastTrack. I'm from General Dynamics IT division. I've been with them about 8 years, and we're going to be talking about our engagement with Azure and how it went.
The check is cleared, right? So
The check is
good
clear.
thing.
All good.
All right, good deal.
Hey, good morning. My name is Anthony Delegard. I'm a principal FastTrack engineer. I've been with the company for about 11 years. I've been working with Azure since 2014. It's a pleasure to see you and be here today with you.
All right, awesome. So here's going to be the agenda. We just did introductions. We're going to talk about the session brief and objectives. We'll then get into challenges with the cloud, and we'll talk about what this FastTrack for Azure program is all about, which is helping a lot of customers with their challenges onboarding into the cloud. Then we'll talk about the approach of how we actually onboard customers into the program. Then I'm going to turn it over to Junior, and he's going to go into some really deep technical, setting you up, man.
Right?
Really deep technical patterns and practices that kind of evolved from a lot of our customers. And then we'll talk to Mark. So Mark is going to talk about his experience working with the program and also his customer and how this program actually expedited a lot of the services that they were deploying. And then we'll leave it for Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. So as far as the session brief, I'm just going to build this out. We're going to talk about the FastTrack program, and I just want to kind of level set. So this is a 200 level course or session. It's going to go a little deeper than that. I got to talk about the program, obviously. And the key thing around the program, guys, is that this is a partnership that Microsoft has with our customers. It's not a sales pitch because I have nothing to sell you guys, right? It's a free program. So again, the program is really about us helping you get the time to value of your Azure investment. That's really what it's about. So we'll talk about onboarding customers to the platform, what the benefits of the program is. We're going to go then into some deep technical architectures and patterns, and then Mark is going to talk about his experience there. So cloud onboarding and all of the challenges. I was working with Junior here, so we kind of brainstormed and came with this crazy exhaustive list. And if we kind of went through that list of all the challenges you could expect, we'd be here till this evening. I mean, it's just too much to go through. But what we did was we kind of just boiled it down to about 5 key challenges that we primarily see most of our customers kind of experience and are pretty much foundational to a lot of the other onboarding challenges. So the first is really about single sign-on. So this is identity. So if you're new to the cloud, chances are you have a local identity store. It's probably Windows Active Directory. And now you're looking to branch out to the cloud. And with the cloud, you're going to be kind of faced with different types of different authentication providers, right? So this could be you moving your intranet to a PaaS, or you consuming SaaS, such as a Dropbox or Slack. And what the operations teams and the security teams have to deal with is just kind of limiting the proliferation of a lot of accounts out there, right? So we're looking to see how you guys can streamline your end user experience as they log into different systems. I was working with a customer last week. They were sharing a screen. They logged into 3 or 4 different applications, they actually had a different account for each of those applications, right? So we're going to talk about how we can resolve that. Next is network connectivity. So again, you probably have your data centers, you probably already have your mesh of connectivity there. But as you onboard into the cloud, now you're looking at taking on new regions, expanding your data center out to these new regions, and you got to figure out what your topology kind of structure is going to be. And the scenarios around those topology structures, right? So is it just a data center extension, or are you actually servicing B2B or B2C? And if you're doing B2B and B2C, then how do you control those entities when they come into your network? Ensure that they're segregated and air gap. So those are a lot of things you got to think about from there. Next is cloud governance. This is a love-hate type of thing with our customers, right? So you know you need it, but honestly, it's actually rarely implemented. And hopefully you guys seen the new announcements today. We've done a lot in this space with Azure governance. We see the full spectrum around governance. I mean, we've seen where there's absolutely no governance at all. So it's kind of like the Wild West in the cloud space, all the way to the other extreme where it's a complete police state, you know, where you're giving blood to, to do anything. And what you got to do is you got to find that happy medium, right, to where you're implementing the controls that you need, but you're not slowing up pretty much the innovation that you need to move forward. Hybrid cloud management and monitoring. This is probably the most religious discussions that we have with our customers. I mean, this one is key. It can get emotional. And the reason is most ops teams have probably grown up on the certain tool for many years, a lot of different versions. And then what happens is you start deploying assets out into the cloud. And so now you got to do this self-reflection on your tool to see, okay, is the functionality there for me to really monitor things that we're deploying out into the cloud? Like, is the functionality there? And if not, do we have to then invest in a tool that's more cloud native? And if we invest in that tool, is there an integration path for that tool to keep me a single pane of glass? And ultimately, do we have to abandon this tool that we kind of loved and grown up on? So those are really deep conversations to talk about. And then last is just skill and guidance, right? So things operate different in the cloud. And so you have to be aware of the technical debt that your company may have. We get conversations with customers. Hey, what's wrong with deploying these classic VMs? They work fine, right? And what's all this JSON templating about? And why can't I run my VB scripts against these workloads? That's the VB script one. That's not true. I dated myself, didn't I? All right. Hey, I used to be a NetIQ knowledge script developer, so I go way back. So now let's talk about what this program is really all about. And then I'm going to get out of the way and let Junior really get into the meat of this. So again, this program is all about us streamlining the time to value of your Azure investment. This is not a kick the tires program. So if you're new to Azure, we can introduce you to a lot of great people, a lot of great teams that will help you kick the tires. People come into the FastTrack for Azure program when the stakes are high, when there's a little uncertainty about what they're trying to do, what they're trying to design and build for. And they want that extra set of eyes to come and validate their design to move forward. That's really what this program's about. And so how do we do that? If you get into the program, we'll do this handshake to where we will assign an engineer and/or engineers, depending on how many work streams that you're working with. And then what we do is we look at your documentation. We look at where you're trending. And we understand, and we look at your architecture diagrams. And then we take you through this, what we call this guidance framework. Now, this guidance framework, this is a compilation of a lot of things. It's documentation that the FastTrack for Azure team is intimately aware of. It's data from our Azure product groups. It's internal data from other customers that may be applicable to your same design situations. And so the output of that is we talk to you about designs, best practices, the anti-patterns that you don't want to do. reference architectures, obviously. Again, best practices. And then we get to my favorite part of the engagement, which is what's called the pillars of software quality. Now, if you're not familiar with that, if you got your laptop up or your mobile phone, do a search, Microsoft Pillars of Software Quality. You'll land on this page, and you'll get a little more information about this. But essentially, this part of the engagement is where we kind of kindly and gently tell you that your baby is ugly. I'm just going to tell you the truth. That's just what it's about. So let's go into this, because this is an important key concept that's part of these engagements. So again, you're going to have a business objective. You're going to need that to be in the program. And that's going to be our North Star. We don't derail from what the business is trying to do. And then what's going to happen is we're going to look at your workloads. And again, we're going to go back to this pillars of software quality. And what this means is we're going to challenge your design against all of these principles that we have a lot of information about and a lot of knowledge about. So is your design, have you designed it for availability and resilience? Have you designed it to be performant and scalable automatically? Again, DevOps, security, governance. So this is kind of the litmus test that we're going to look at your workload and ensure that this is all baked in, because what we're hoping to do for you is so that when you have a workload and you deploy it onto Azure, that it is as cloud native as possible, right? So a couple of years ago, what was kind of popular was the traditional or the raw lift and shift, right? You said, hey, I got 100 VMs, 100 servers. I just need to get to the cloud. And you just migrated all those servers to the cloud. And so what the data is telling us today for those companies that have done that is they brought a lot of garbage into the cloud, right? A lot of bad processes that they were doing on premises into the cloud. And so they're having a hard time trying to retool the way that they've done these deployments over the last couple of years. So again, what we're trying to do is let's upfront make your workload as cloud native as possible, so when it comes time for your phase 2, phase 3, and phase beyond deployments, it's a push button effect. Okay? And then again, we'll also talk about, we will consider your functional specs as well. So example of that is if you come to us and you say, well, we want to be within this cost threshold per month. And so we'll advise you on the different services in Azure, from your premium tiers down to your basic, and we'll talk about the different functionalities that you can expect. And so again, it's kind of we'll find that happy medium for you. So just to kind of, sum this up, and then we're going to get into the technical stuff here, is that, again, FastTrack for Azure. This is a free service to you. There's no cost to you at all. You get to talk directly to Azure engineers like myself and the team up here. And then again, what we do about this program is this is a very partner-led program. We become very native to you and your team. We become V-team members, right? We're on your calls weekly, and we're talking to you about all your strategy. And then on the other side is the engagement phases. So we have engineers. We also have program managers. And our program managers will then sync with your PJMs, your project managers. And we try to be pretty light on this, You probably have your project. We don't bloat your project at all. We will slide in when necessary and needed. And that's it. So, does that make sense, guys? We good? All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Junior, and he's going to talk about how do we mitigate some of those cloud challenges that I spoke to earlier.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so here is where we'll detail the Azure FastTrack onboarding process. So our approach, so once you have an engineer assigned, the first thing we do, we have a scoping call with whatever application team, line of business, application, or central IT. Here's where we will essentially scope your business objectives, assess and get an enterprise snapshot of your current environment. Once that is done, we allocate all the data, we bring it in-house, we review with some of my fellow engineers here, and then we come up with recommendations and guidance moving forward. At this point in time, if there are any product gaps, that is a point in time in which we will actually surface those product gaps to the product group. So for example, like one of my customers during an internal scoping call, they required continuous public IPs for their application. I submitted it, and it's GA, it's in private preview this week, among some of the other new features you guys see here. Once this is done, then we schedule out follow-up sessions, I like to call it knowledge transfer sessions, in which we actually perform solution reviews, or if you require any fundamentals or knowledge transfer as it relates to whatever application or service that you're interested in. We support a majority of hero solutions in Azure. We have engineers that are credentialed, ready to go, ready to work with your team. So this is essentially what our onboarding process is: run a feasibility assessment, determine next steps, schedule a follow-up solution calls or knowledge transfer calls. Some of the key design principles for onboarding to Azure are as follows. First, we want to establish common identity. Phil spoke a little bit about that earlier. Next, we establish cloud governance, all right? And whilst at the same time, we establish what is called shared services. So in terms of common identity, this year, when we were putting together the presentation, I had a bunch of bullets, and with the help of the team and everyone else, we essentially put together a diagram to highlight this. So this is like a mini diagram of what an on-premise network would look like. You have some domain controllers, you have a DMZ. The first thing we would like you to do here is to establish Azure Active Directory connection. That is, you sync your users and groups into Azure AD. This would facilitate in ensuring that the person that is logging in and managing Azure will leverage the same credentials that they use on premise. So you don't have, different accounts that's going to be used across multiple different systems. So again, here we have a domain controllers. We establish our AD connect. We recommend you do this in high availability mode. Once it is synced, now users from on-premise or external users would have the ability to interrogate your Azure AD. So for example, users will essentially use the same username and passwords on-premise to manage Azure. So once this is done, the next thing we recommend is we establish a site-to-site VPN connection. So assuming that you have an Azure subscription, the first thing you do, you create a VNet. Next thing, you deploy what is called a VNet gateway, and you establish site-to-site VPN there. Once that is completed, we recommend that you put a jump box for obvious reasons, meaning that in the event you lose connectivity to your on-premise network, you could log into the Azure portal, leveraging a common identity that you just synced, start the jump box, and have the ability to manage the assets within your subscription there. I see a few people in the crowd are shaking their heads, so obviously they're applying these design principles, so that's awesome. Next thing we do here, we deploy domain controllers in an availability set or availability zone. Leverage that capability where applicable in the Azure region you're in. All right. The reason why we recommend this is, again, we would like you to treat your Azure VNet as a standalone site. So in the event that you lose connectivity, your authentication authorization requests are not going over the VPN. It will essentially be local to the site in which we deploy these resources. And once that is completed, you essentially add whatever service you have onto the domain controllers. And pretty much at this point in time, you've established what I've called extended and common identity, both in the PaaS and the IaaS space. So some common identity recommended practices. Again, deploy Azure Active Directory, connect in a high availability mode. Next thing, implement domain controllers per region. So if you're in multiple regions in Azure, right, I recommend that you deploy domain controllers in every region that you have. Right, if you're unable to do that, leverage VNet pairing or any site-to-site VPN connection within Azure itself to ensure that your assets have the ability to interrogate domain controllers. Leverage high availability sets and zones, very, very important. I've worked with a customer who was setting up a Splunk instance. He got everything up and running. reached out to me. He's like, could you validate this? I validated. None of his key components had availability sets in it. So he ended up having to redeploy everything. So very, very important. This ensures that your assets are going to stay online in the event that we patch your rack, or in the event that we have a service outage. Ensure that your site definition for Active Directory is configured in Azure. All right. So we've seen some customers who've deployed domain controllers in Azure forgot to enable a site or define the site in Active Directory, and pretty much you had on-site servers reaching out to Azure, right, for authentication requests. So very, very important here. Next thing here, we recommend you designate a resource group for your identity components in Azure, specifically because you do not want to have those shared resources being, managed by multiple people. So create create a designated resource group and pretty much apply your RBAC on that resource group itself. And for your DCs, enable BitLocker encryption, right? This is enabled. You can enable this leveraging Key Vault, all right? And it's essentially an extension in Azure that you could do. So what to avoid in common identity? Having standalone identities, all right? Do not create an Azure subscription and have multiple identities to manage it, all right? Ensure that your Active Directory AD sync and connect is configured. Standalone, a single domain controller is deployed in your VNet. Please do not do that. All right? If for whatever reason that domain controller goes offline, pretty much your assets will not be able to be operable anymore. Active Directory domain services replication occurring over a non-reliable link. If you do not have a reliable link, I don't recommend that you replicate traffic over that link at all, because you're going to get tombstone entries within your domain controllers. Granting global admin or elevated access to Azure Active Directory. So we've seen a lot of customers where when they're allocating permissions into Azure, everyone has global admin, subscription owner. Please limit that, right? Please implement some RBAC strategy. Have 1 or 2 people who will have access to that or a service account. All right. Enabling or registering Active Directory Connect and domain to a Visual Studio subscription. Yes, I've seen tons of this. Please try to avoid doing that, because it will mean that if you do that and you migrate to an enterprise subscription, we'll have to break it and reconnect. All right, so these are some of the things to avoid. Cloud governance. So here, one of the things I recommend after this, you guys read up on the Azure Enterprise Scaffold. It pretty much really forms a foundation and a basis for cloud governance. This essentially states that you have an account or enterprise agreement, you create your subscriptions. The key things here in terms of the pillars, we recommend that you have Azure policies, all right, policies and audit policies defined, very, very important. All right, specifically for places and customers who require, for example, geographical, the ability to keep their data within the region itself. You could write a policy to ensure that your data will not leave that specific Azure region or that country you're in. Naming standards. The majority of us have naming standards. Port your naming standards from on-premise to Azure. If you don't have one, we actually have a really good documentation of how to name assets in Azure. Right? It is definitely, it's one of the more important things I think here in the cloud governance. Okay, so and these are the 6 services, and we've added some since, that we really recommend you implement for your cloud governance strategy. Resource tags. Resource tags, very, very important, right? This essentially helps with your billing, but more importantly, I sort of look at it as an inherent CMDB for identification of resources in Azure. All right, so if you have different environments, if you leverage your naming standards, you could also leverage resource tags to help identify some of these key components. Resource locks, very important here. This is a feature you could enable on your Azure assets itself to ensure that modifications or deletions are not being performed. So for example, if you have a VNet or if you have a virtual network gateway, right, you could apply a resource lock on it to prevent accidental deletion or modification to those resources. Resource groups. We recommend that you place your resources in resource groups, right, and you identify it by some sort of identification criteria. You could do it by line of business. You could do it by functional components of the organization. The reason why we recommend resource groups is you have the ability to now control your RBAC from the resource group level. All right, so you could either control it from the resource group level or from the resource level itself. Role-based access controls, very, very important here. The authentication is performed via Azure AD. The authorization is performed via RBAC. All right. We have some custom roles which integrate with our resource providers in Azure. All right. If those are not sufficient, we recommend that you could create your own custom role, right, and have these applied to the subscriptions in which you enable. All right. Here we have Azure Automation. The way how I envision this Azure Automation as a product, I just want you to envision it as some sort of automation. Ensure that when assets are being onboarded into Azure, they're done in a consistent fashion. All right, some of my customers use PowerShell, some of my customers use Python, some customers use Terraform. All right. Essentially here, the point is ensure that assets are being onboarded in Azure in a consistent manner. And subscription monitoring. Whenever you provision a subscription, like even if you do not use OMS for your all-up monitoring needs, at least integrate your subscription monitoring with OMS so that way you have an audit log trail. So you can interrogate that to determine the activity on your subscription, because I think the audit logs only last for about 30 days. So if you apply this, you look at your environment, you apply these key components, you essentially will have what is called cloud governance. All right. So what to avoid? Avoid creating a large number of subscriptions. All right. You know, more things are much more complex to handle and manage than just one. So try to minimize the number of subscriptions as much as possible. We have some customers out there who have like, 80, 200 subscriptions. Try to minimize that as much as possible. It increases your complexity. Granting owner access to the subscription. That should only be done on exceptional cases. All right, I recommend you guys leverage your roles, the built-in roles, or create a custom roles that will meet your organizational needs. Granting guest accounts access to subscriptions or resource groups. This is a very common one here where, you know, with the inherent B2B and B2C components with Azure AD, we've seen some customers who've had guest accounts enabled, right, and not auditing it at all. The guest was actually, you know, the person was, I guess, was actually logging in and managing assets. So we want to avoid that. Create a user ID within your Azure Active Directory or AD itself, so that way when the user is provisioned and disabled using your built-in processes, those are inherent. Creating resources in another region that is different from the resource group region. All right? So yes, in Azure, you have the ability to create resource groups and specify which region it is. That essentially is a configuration metadata that is stored on that specific region. All right? We recommend that you create resources in the same region as your resource group. In the event that our region goes offline, you will not be able to make modifications to those resources at all. So pair your resources and your resource groups together. Next one, duplicating native Azure native services. We've seen some customers that have 10 automation accounts, 10 OMS accounts. All right, try to minimize duplicating services in Azure that essentially performs the same functions, consolidate it as much as possible. All right, so now next we establish what is called shared services. So here, we built or we extended our identity. We have Azure AD Connect. We have domain controllers in the cloud. The next thing we require you to do is establish shared services. So these are a list of services essentially that are going to be shared by your line of business applications or your applications within your VNet or your data center. All right? You could create a shared services subnet or subnets in which your web servers, database servers, assets will interact with. So the first thing, DNS, right? You could either leverage native DNS in Azure, bring your own DNS via domain controllers, or you could leverage appliances. All right, so establish DNS first because it helps with name resolutions of assets within your VNet and your data center. Next, antivirus, very, very important. All right, we've seen a lot of people ship assets into Azure without any AV support. All right, if you don't have one, we have resources in Azure that could facilitate with such, or you extend your current antivirus footprint into Azure itself. Monitoring, very, very important again. All right, ensure that your assets in Azure are being monitored. That way you have an overall state and snapshot of what's happening within your subscription and your assets that exist in your VNet. Backups. Do not put critical workloads in Azure if it's not being backed up. All right, if you don't have a backup strategy, leverage the one that we have in Azure or extend your current backup strategy or backup application into Azure. Security Center. Security Center is relatively new. We do recommend this because you get a really good security posture of your subscription. Like if I log into my subscription right now, I probably have like 80 alerts saying, hey, you need to enable this, you need to disable that. But if you just need like a second pair of eyes, Security Center is a really good asset and resource to leverage in terms of establishing security posture of your subscription. Configuration management. This is really with integrating with your CI/CD platforms, ensuring that you have established some sort of desired state configuration with your assets. So you could essentially track your changes that are occurring on the systems itself. We do have integration with automation, Azure Automation, to validate and see the number of changes that are occurring. At least that could help with your overall security strategy and change strategy that you have on premise, or in the cloud, sorry. Update patch management, right? Enable some sort of Windows update or Linux update or whatever patch management. Ensure that your assets in Azure are being patched. All right, very, very important. You don't want to have unpatched systems being affected by viruses or compromises, all right? And software deployment, all right? Ensure that you have some software deployment strategy in the event that you need to roll out patches and you need to roll out application updates, all right? The same principles that you have on premise extend those to Azure.
Whoops.
Well,
Exclamation mark.
So the things here, I know this is very IaaS-centric. However, you could leverage some of the PaaS code. You could leverage these same principles for PaaS components as well. All right. So you establish shared services in Azure. So the previous diagram was very simple. Now you could establish the same thing with a hub-spoke model. All right. You create a hub VNet. You place your shared services within the hub. All right, enable your shared services there, and then you enable your spoke VNets leveraging VNet pairs. All right, we will see a lot more enterprise customers who leverage such a design. So again, in terms of implementation, it stays the same. You're just essentially implementing shared services under a hub-spoke model. So what to do in shared services? Again, determine your network architecture first. So when Azure FastTrack onboards with customers, that's one of the first things I do. All right, identity and network architecture. This is very important. Enable multiple means of notification in events assets are offline. Right? So you have the ability to enable SMS, email, but ensure that your monitoring strategy has a notification enabled. Next, create OMS workspace and integrate audit logs for Azure for all your subscriptions. Again, if you're not going to use OMS for your overall monitoring strategy, at least enable it for monitoring the audit logs of your subscriptions. Enable Azure Security Center. Again, this provides security posture of your subscription and workloads in your environment. Ensure your virtual machines are right-sized. All right, very, very important. I've seen customers deploy critical workloads on A's. Those are really targeted for dev tests. Please at least use minimum D's. If you don't know, use minimum D's. And if for whatever reason you need to optimize, you could optimize after the fact. And last but not least, ensure change control practices and processes are enabled in Azure. All right. The same recommended practices that you leverage on premise that have been proven over the years, extend those into Azure. So what to avoid in shared services? Placing IaaS assets into Azure that are not patched. So for customers who manage their own image, for workloads that you're going to place in Azure, ensure that you have a patching strategy to patch those offline images. Next, using public IP addresses for IaaS assets created in Azure. Please minimize that. Avoid that at all accounts. We have solutions like Azure Firewalls and site-to-site VPNs to access your workloads. So try to avoid placing public IP addresses on assets in Azure. Deploying critical resources without an availability set or zone. All right? This is probably the third or fourth time I mentioned that. It is very important. This ensures that your assets are going to be available in the event of a disaster or in the event that we're going to patch the BRK. Next, deploying IaaS assets without antivirus or anti-malware software installed. Again, ensure that not because it's in the cloud means that you don't, you stop applying recommended practices. So again, ensure that you have some antivirus or anti-malware story out there. All right, and now I'm going to bring Mark on the stage now.
Thanks, Junior. Thank you. Well, I just want to let y'all know that what Junior just talked about is absolutely correct. They asked me to come up here and talk about my experience with FastTrack, and just to let you know, everything that he just went through is a bit of a gospel statement. It's good stuff. So my name is Mark Bowden. I'm from GDIT, General Dynamics Information Technology, and I have been working with actually Anthony and his team. There are many, many teams, but I've been working with Anthony and his team. We're actually out of Falls Church, Virginia, actually a headquarters area, and we support mainly public sector customers, which, as some of you might know, I don't know how many public sector customers support. It's a different space, for those that do commercial, but we have a lot of customers, and the FastTrack team was something that I went looking for and found as part of our partner alliance. So GDIT, large integrator with the federal government. We have a lot of different divisions. I'm actually with the IT division, and we have a lot of customers that are in both, the civilian sector, health, state and local as well. So what I'm going to show you here is a little kind of sample of what we had and the challenge that we had and why we engaged in with the FastTrack team. So I was asked early on to bring a program online and bring them up as quickly as possible into a FedRAMP High space. For those that, there are only 3 FedRAMP Highs that you can host with. GDIT actually has one, and Azure has one of the other ones. And we were asked to put this together for our customer so that we could get up and running in a very quick amount of time. At the same time, for those of you who may or may not know, some of the ideas about when you bring it into a customer space, over here, the NIST 853, we had to put an ATO around it. It's an authorization to operate. So we were required to make sure that it was a secure boundary for sharing information with the customer. So we had a lot of challenges to put this together. We had to find a place to host it, put it up, go quickly, and then, as is important with a lot of people, make sure we get the revenue working. So for us, the idea was to get up and running quickly, and we did. Problem is, that success has led to a challenge. The challenge for us was that we had the business units asking for more and more as we grew, what they wanted with the data, how they wanted to change it, the models we had to do. I mean, some of the things that both Phil and Junior were just talking about are true, absolutely true. It's a very hard thing to do when you're trying to sort of move something, you're in a secure space, and you're trying to also add services to it. I cannot just add things to my boundary. It's impossible. I have to go through my security people who want to tell me no. I want to tell them yes. So we have a lot to do to get through it. So our challenges really were, we wanted to add shared services. The shared services that Junior just mentioned are actually, I believe, one of the large upsides to going into the cloud. Case in point, you cannot just move in large analytics unless you really want to spend all the time and money and put the software in and the licenses and get all the approvals to get that done. It's a real bonus round to go up there when it's already done for you, and you just have to plug into it and do it right. We had a challenge for us also. The analytics, they wanted to change us around. We have a lot of people in the field. We wanted to know where they were, how we can help them, how is their productivity, how can we make them work better and make it easier for them. Very important to us. We have a partner, excellent partner that goes through, and we have a case system, and we were working with them, and how do we bring them along with us on this journey to get them up into the cloud? Two parts. We wanted to make sure that we could actually scale, go bigger, and at the same time, bring them along with us. So we worked very closely with our partner, and it's a very large case system that they have. So we brought them along for the journey, and we brought them also into the FastTrack team to work with us as well. Anthony was fantastic about helping with that. We were an IaaS legacy system. So like most people probably here, they bring in the IaaS. It's nice and easy. It's easy to work with. It's what we're used to. And we had to make sure we take that and we had to bring that along too. So one of the areas here that was actually one of our larger challenges was how do we get some more granular monitoring into the system, before we moved. So a lot of you may or may not know that one of the things that you can do here that I found, and I've talked to the guys about this, was I wanted some better monitoring. Well, one of the things that I'm going to talk about here is the idea of actually start getting into the cloud, maybe not all at once, but in stages. If you go in stages, I believe that it's something that's easier to be able to bring your management along, bring your team along, train them. Training's big, because if they don't know how to work the monitoring, it's really not going to be of great use to anyone. So we actually put in OMS, the monitoring system, in our previous cloud, and to actually monitor it. It's actually pretty straightforward. Some of you need to look at that. It's OMS Gateway. You can bring the data right up there. What I'm going to talk about in here is that staging yourself into the cloud is probably better than trying to move all at once, my opinion. So, FastTrack team. What was it all about? Why did we go looking for them? Well, the company itself does have a relationship with all the major clouds. So I have to be fair. I like these guys, but we do have relationships with all the major people, even the people you can buy gummy bears from. And one of the things that was real important to me when I went looking for that, I'm big on teams. If we're going to do anything, and I've been doing this a number of years, it's important to have the right team. So building good teams is so important to the success of any program that I run that, for me, this was really, really important that we make sure we get the right people. With that, I recognize I might know a lot of things. The team knows a lot of things. But the Azure folks know a little bit more. So for me, it was important to recognize the strengths, the weaknesses that you have on a team, and put in the people that you need to be successful. It doesn't do you any good if you go in and you got the wrong people on your team and you think the people you have are just the right ones to get the job done. This is a lot of new stuff. Even for me, I've done data centers, big stuff, small stuff. It's important to bring the right people along. Great thing about them is they are customer focused. They have a great mindset about doing this, as you just seen from the Junior and also from Phil talking about that. Real, real important. Credibility. If you're going to try and sell Azure, moving from one cloud to the next, someone's going to ask you a question. Why are we doing it? Now, you can bring yourself along and you can tell people, and they might believe you. Senior management might have a lot to say about that. But if you let them know that you're doing it with the people that are on the cloud, it kind of goes a little bit better. So the credibility you get from actually engaging with the team is very, very important. Again, knowledge, the outside customers they've done work with, folks that even Junior was talking about, customers he's had. It's very important. Ownership. I put this thing in here. There's an interesting little bit here. I mentioned this thing about they own the cookbook. It's absolutely correct. For those of you who've actually perused the Azure site, going through, looking at it, a lot of the documents, I see a lot of you taking pictures of things that Junior's put up there. A lot of this stuff is all out there, and it's in different visualizations. But the fact that they own the cookbook is something that was real important to me. If I had questions, I wanted to be able to make something happen. It's like I had a discussion with Anthony. It was about, he goes, why don't you use the global traffic manager? And we can get you high availability. I mean, if the region goes down, we can easily flip it. You can also use that, the knowledge you gave me. He says, well, I could also, when I'm doing a maintenance release, switch to the other region. Nice. Works real easy. He just brought up one. I suggested the other. Great working with the team. But the thing about the cookbook is that they know where everything is. They have reach back. They can go to other people for it. So you can make sure that with the confidence you can enable the solution, get it done, and put it in place. Very, very important. Partnership. These guys work directly with you. They help you get to where you want to go, and you can determine the pace. There's times where you got to really move fast, and most of the time, I think as he mentioned, this is the time to sort of get into fast track. Some people may want to go a little slower, but for us, we wanted to go a little bit faster because we'd already made some progress in going there. We've already deployed a small platform, tested out, get buy-in, real important. But the partnership here was great. Ever a question, always an answer. Performance, as they get on the team, as they mentioned already, they're part of the team. We integrate, we have the meetings, we engage, we go through the discussions, change the diagrams, change the architecture, whatever it needs to be. Very important. So you don't want to change around your cadence with your team. Your team has cadence. You have your reporting structure. You got to know where you're going, but they engage. They've done enough of these. They have some people that are very good with the relationships, knowing how to work the relationship. You know, as I met with Anthony, he understood what it was like to pitch it to senior management. It made it easier for me. So we got the job done. I didn't have to change my cadence. I didn't have to change anything. He knew exactly where we were going. Big one, costs. How many people know where free Microsoft service is? I got to tell you, it's a shocker. It's a real shocker. I didn't understand this. They told me first, I go up to, we have an alliance team. And I go up to them, they say, hey, Mark, you really want to get engaged with these guys. And I said, well, what's it going to cost? Because the first thing for me is I'm going to go up to my boss and say, Phil's boss, say, hey, Phil, I got this thing I want to do, right? He's like, Mark, build another aircraft carrier, huh? Right? Because he knows me. So I find out, and they go, oh, no, it's no cost. And so I'm like, oh, fabulous. So Anthony, give him a call. We engage as we're talking about how you engage. And at the same time, I go, look, well, I got another one. I got to get an ATO. I got to get a security wrap around my whole space. We can help with that too. For any of you that need to go and change around your security platform and your guidance, we use a NIST 853, pretty standard for those that have to do this. They have people to do that too. They own it. It's a cookbook, right? We already had 2 ATOs. We needed help translating essentially from English to Azure. So a lot of your security people, they're going to want static IPs. It's even stuff that Junior's talking about. There's no real static IPs in the cloud. So for those of you writing an ATO, you need to have someone help you translate. Okay? Can't tell you. It's not something you're going to just stroll right into and figure out. You need the help. Real important. Down at the bottom, you notice this little thing called nomination process. And Anthony, I think you might know a little bit more about the nomination process, but you got to get, you got to engage with them to find out if you're the right customer for the need.
Yeah. So primarily, if you are a partner and you have a customer that wants to engage, you can nominate that partner on behalf of them. Also, if you have a Microsoft account, like a technical account manager or an account technology strategist or an account executive, they can also nominate you. But more importantly, as of recently, you can actually go to the Azure.com FastTrack page and nominate yourself. This is something that we've also introduced as well. So based upon that and your criteria, we'll review it and figure out basically at that point if we're a right fit. And just like what Mark said, we're actually part of your Azure EA, so we're actually part of the product. So you get literally the bodies right here to go with the product, and it's at no extra cost and expertise.
Thanks, Anthony. So put together this kind of short timeline about how we went through this. very similar to what the guys were saying already about the engagement. Little background, we had actually taken the step already through the team we're working with to already get started on putting a platform up there. So when we came to the FastTrack team, we had, I was fortunate enough to be able to build my team with one person that actually would help me out with the vision. And here, when we engaged, it was real important. We brought everyone to the table, brought all the technical smart people into the table to talk about this and how we got basically started. So engaging with them was important. We start off, we go through exactly what Junior and Phil were talking about, which is talk about your architecture, what are your challenges, where you want to go, how you're going to do it. We go through further, and we talk a little bit about the GovCloud. So we're in the GovCloud. Some of you might be looking to go into the commercial side. The GovCloud has some different challenges. Not all the product and the offerings are there, which is always fun to find out that you really want to get that tool, and it's not there yet. But actually, Anthony helped out a couple times with some of that stuff where we were able to actually get around that problem. So that's also another important one, because you really, really may want to get something, and it's not there yet, because GovCloud tends to lag behind the rest. So we went and we talked about our IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service, and PaaS. We had no PaaS before. So we talked about what that's going to look like. My intent was actually to go up into PaaS as much as we could. Some of the reasons for the PaaS were didn't want to manage it, didn't want to patch it, and wanted to be able to take advantage of some of the availability services that are actually built into it. So in our case, SQL PaaS, for those of you who haven't done it, and I'm going to use my own analogy. SQL PaaS is like clustered SQL. For those of you who have IaaS SQL right now, this is great. It's good stuff. You get the high availability, you get all the services there, and it works just like the IaaS version. Really, really nice. You do have some challenges with it about how you can't touch it, but if you're good with that, it's a great choice. We're going with it. So we talked about our IaaS first as we went through it to make sure that we were going to be able to move from where we were on to here. Most people start with IaaS. My strategy was move in, stay as IaaS, promote to PaaS where you could. I think it's a good strategy, get you in without having to struggle with all the challenges you may have with PaaS. So we talked about how we would do that. So our first one was to move in. Second was the team helped me out with PaaS, how we were going to convert to that. So as part of this PaaS environment, our customer, or one of our partners that works with us on our case system, comes into play. They have a COTS system, does case management. They're in about 90% of the market in the federal space, where people are using this for all sorts of things from loan management to licenses, et cetera. So we had to work with them. We found out there were some challenges with their product and how they actually authenticate and how they actually operated with the system. So we went back to Anthony, to the team. He reached back to the development team. They were not engaged initially with us. They engaged them. A couple great guys helped us get through a lot of the challenges. We bring our partner in. We bring in the developers on the other side. They provided some very, very cool solutions to doing this stuff and did it actually very quickly. I was actually fairly shocked that the amount of knowledge was fantastic. It's like some of the guys and gals you see on the floor out here, really, really deep on their knowledge. So they helped us through this. So we went through a whole sort of a sub-cycle trying to get the COTS product working in our new environment. And in the end to that one, we beat it, we worked it, and we got it done. And we announced that one with the partner. They're now fully engaged to get into Azure with us and move their product further upstream. It's a great thing. After this, we're going to be having a follow-on meeting about how we're going to get them fully into the cloud. And the partner's very, very excited about doing that. Oh, well, one quick thing about the, see if this works. Technology redundancy established. Last one on the bottom. Something that I realized coming through this was we are actually doing one thing, and I throw this out to you all, is that for us, we still have a couple challenges with PaaS and some of the things we have in our environment. We are operating both IaaS and PaaS in there. You can do that. It's actually pretty neat. Reason why we're doing it is that if there's any we have to make sure we maintain operational status. It's got to be available. It's got to be on. Business unit won't be too happy if it goes down for reasons that it's technical. They're not interested, right? And rightly so. So you can easily put in load balancers and other kind of equipment to be able to switch. So if you're having a problem, and this was just my experience, that you can actually have, using PaaS, if you run into any problems, you flip the load balancer switch, you're in IaaS. You don't go offline. So technology redundancy is something that we didn't really talk about. It's something that we came up with as we discussed. I think it's a neat thing, and it's something to consider when you're trying to move in and you're trying to get a decision made about how do I go and I really want to go to PaaS and I'm not ready. You can put them both in, hold on to both of them, run them, and as soon as you're ready, turn it down. Load balancer goes away, you're all set. Some really cool tricks. Business impacts. One of the big ones here for us was making sure that the partner that we were bringing with us was able to keep up and stay with us on this, because we're using their product. It's important to the business. So we basically, and when we went through this with their help from FastTrack, was we unblocked the cloud model. We actually figured it out. We went through, we had the IaaS to PaaS solution, and we actually are maintaining some of the IaaS in the system until we actually feel more confident that we're good to go with some of our performance. Cost efficiency. As most of you might know, it's a great place to actually manage your costs. It's right built into the cloud. You can see what you're using. You can turn it down, turn it up. You can right size it like Junior's talking about. You don't want to go and find yourself a big old M-class box, because you think, wow, a terabyte of memory and a whole bunch of cores is a good thing. It is, but you get a chance to see what's going on there. So I think that's a great one. If you got an organization where the cost is really important, you can see it all the time. And you see it, if you have the only thing you won't see is any kind of discount, but you will see what your costs are. Real important. Market opportunity. The one slide that Junior had up, which I thought was fantastic, was shared services. I would go into the cloud for shared service alone. How do you get into analytics? How do you get into the cheap storage? How do I get into DR, real DR? I got to tell you what, a lot of customers in the federal space challenged with DR. They talk about it. They talk about contingency plans, not DR. I'm going to be clear, okay? This one, it's real. I can flip to a region, and I can do it every time we roll out a new release, if I'm going to do maintenance, I invoke my DR. You can't pay for that anywhere else. That alone, that part of the architecture, is something that is a huge sell for those of you doing bids, doing work with any of the customers to say, I got to stay up. I got to be online. It's actually, this is the first time I got to tell you that there is a solution. It works. It's not that complex, and you don't have to put all your gear in the failover site. You can put something that's low and slow. But the opportunity for the shared service is fantastic. One of the reasons that we're going is analytics is big for us. We're moving in. I've got to use it. If I'm in a cleared space and I want to be able to use it, I have got to connect those services to my security boundary. You can do that with this. Yes, you have to update your ATO, but once it's in, you're good. You can do a lot of very cool things there. The continuity, simplified the business continuity. It does make it easy just to operate this. I have been able to reduce what I normally would have done in a large team of engineers. These are your tier 3 engineers. Used to have about 100 that were working on a large government contract. I don't need 100. You don't need them. You're not trying to get rid of people. You can repurpose them, but you do not need that many people to run this operation. You can have large and still run it. It's a fantastic way to actually manage your people better, give them opportunities to move on. A couple takeaways. As I mentioned, build your team. Don't stumble on this one. Find the help. This is part of the help. The FastTrack team is part of it. They will ensure your success. If you're going to be making a big commitment, you're going to be putting your name on the line to senior management to get this move, if that's what you're looking for. I don't think anyone's gone wrong by saying, Microsoft's a bad way to go. A lot of people may have their own opinions, but I'm better on making basically an investment in the people. I pick the people. I'm about picking the people. I'm not about picking the technology. You can buy that every day. It's about the people. The great part about moving in here too is don't be afraid. Make mistakes. You can actually just disassemble the whole thing, turn it off, rebuild it. One of those things we found early on. So if you got a lot of junior folks, you're trying to bring them along, trying to get them into this and train them, They can build it. If it's not right, you can scrap it all the way down to the bare metal and start again. It's easy. You don't pay for it. You just turn it off. It's a great way to go up and down to really get these folks in. So if you got a lot of new people, which I frankly got to tell you, I'm finding that a lot of the more junior people love the stuff. They want in. They want the opportunity. Give it to them. Let them just go in and build the stuff. And remember, this is, they know the cloud. They know the cookbook. They have it. They built it. There's a lot of very great people. I went out there. I talked to one of the guys yesterday running the AD. I mentioned to Anthony last night. He's a zealot on Active Directory. I mean, for those of you that need to know about it, he's down there, you know, he's like a prophet. You know, just, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. No, you can't do this. But great knowledge. These are the people that can be reached out to if it gets that deep and you need it. The reach back is there. It's something that you can't go wrong with. So, Bill?
Awesome, Mark. Thank you. All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
We got about 15 minutes. We're going to open it up. I do want to mention this. We have a FastTrack for Azure booth. It's in the Expo Center Landmark. So we got another good portion of our team that is there. They will answer your 400, 500 level questions. And then I think we also got some T-shirts for you too. I think the first 50 people that show up, you might get a gift. That's a rumor. So try that. But let's go ahead and open up. If you got questions, just come to the microphones, and we're actually giving away T-shirts for those that are asking questions as well. So feel free to ask away.
Got one all the way to the right. You're right.
To my right. There we go.
There we go.
Whoa!
Hey, how's it
all
going?
by myself. Mark, can you talk about the timeline from when you actually got engaged and how long it took you to completion, or if you are complete? And from a fingers to keyboard perspective for the migration, does the FastTrack team actually do that, or is that your team with their guidance?
Okay, I'll go back to front. So I know that you all can't really touch, it's not the keyboard activity. I was very fortunate to be able to have a cloud engineer that I found from one of our leverage services internally. Fantastic guy. I'm not going to give you his name. Can't have him. His first name's David. That's all you're going to get out of me. But fantastic guy. But yeah, if I'm correct, you're not allowed. It's not no keyboard action unless you actually get a different contract. I think you need to get a services contract or anything.
Yeah, so we don't do keyboard, but what we do is we'll shadow you in a remote session or even sometimes on there, and we'll tell you what to do, what to point, what to go. But of course, before that, we do definitely engage and come up with a plan. So basically that we're doing this as a scripted methodology.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to have kind of the roadmap. And again, that's kind of the key of this, right? You're venturing out. You've kind of come up with kind of your structure of what you want to do. We're going to come and overlay that, and we're going to, basically tell you this is right, this is wrong. But at the end, you're going to have your roadmap with a solid architecture moving forward.
Right. To answer your question specifically on how much time, we had a couple overachievers in the group. So we'd already done one platform, but I think from when we actually engaged to move, we have 2 additional platforms we're moving. They're much larger. Those actually, the number of sessions was probably, I would probably say we had 5 sessions and some sub-sessions over a few months. Could have done it quicker, but I wasn't being pressed to get it done faster, and I wanted to make sure the group was actually being able to stay up. Real important. Don't lose your group. Don't lose the team, right? So again, you can do it at your own pace. Depends on your team. If you got people that are really good, that may be legacy data center people, they probably can pick the stuff up pretty well. So it wasn't that long for what we're doing. And we actually spent some time on our architecture. So we did just validate it with them, and they added some pieces to it to solidify it. So say 3 months.
Cool. Did you work with a integrator at all, or
No, it was us.
Just you?
In-house.
Thank
Did that
you.
answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't know. You next? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Just a kind of, I think it was similar to what he was asking. Do you have a separate contract for cost when you're bringing in the developers, folks to physically come in and code, or is it kind of falling under the umbrella of what you have for the FastTrack?
So if you go to, so basically in terms of what the gentleman was talking, Mark was talking about is there were some areas that their ISV needed some help with. So we worked with them. We had some people that had that expertise. If you go to our FastTrack page, you'll see all the scenarios and different areas that we can actually support. The primary area was how do we get basically a Java application that was basically designed just for very client app database, very static type of content right there. How do we move that over into PaaS? So we worked with the ISV on behalf of Mark, and we were able to unblock them to make them be a little bit more flexible, a cloud-aware, cloud-native application.
Okay, great, thank you.
Full disclosure, we're already engaged with you guys, specifically working with Junior. But one of the questions I know we haven't asked, and I don't think was answered earlier, was what does the end of the fast track look like for a customer? When do you disengage, and how does that work?
Great question. So that's kind of the beauty of this is, we're there through the whole life cycle of your workload. And so again, when you go phase 2 and you want that additional help, we can re-engage you. So there's not an end date specifically. It's basically built around your project and your project needs.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. There you go.
We didn't know about this arrangement, and we just wrapped up our Azure deployment, kind of.
Okay.
Does this service do like a health check, compliance check, just to make sure that, like after the fact, can we have you guys audit our system, or?
So what you could do is you could engage with us, and we can do what we call as an architecture solution review. And if there's any type of gaps within your actual platform, we'll basically raise them with you, and at that point help you address them.
Thank you.
Yep. Back there. Yep.
Yeah, the question I have is around putting domain controllers in Azure. We have the ESAE environment for our domain controllers, so Red Forest is what it was called for a while. Do you have a pattern for putting that in Azure?
So,
It's a loaded question.
okay.
Well,
We could discuss that.
how about you come to the booth?
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time. We want to answer that. There's a lot to discuss. A lot of different scenarios, but go ahead.
So I work a lot with the DoD, and in that type of scenario, with the tier 0 type of assets right there, there is a model that you can implement right there to actually put basically your actual control management systems, assign jump boxes, and your domain controls. And there is a pattern for the Red Forest product that we're actually working on right now.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can come to the booth, and we can talk to more in detail about it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi. Question is kind of stepping back towards a SaaS kind of environment or method. We're deploying or getting ready to deploy all those work streams like Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer. Is that what you guys mean when you say do it in batches? Engage with FastTrack to finish the entire work stream before you start on another one, or do you mean, is that go in parallel or offset somewhat from each other?
So,
Go ahead.
all right. So one thing I would say is basically, as we look at pretty much, we'll have a conversation with you first. Basically, we'll try to first of all say, okay, what's your business objective? What are you trying to do? By what time you're trying to get this done? And let's figure out the best way to get to that journey. We'll figure out with you from architecture practice and patterns and how to actually orchestrate the actual move for deployment to make sure that it is something that's scalable, it's repeatable, and that ultimately you feel comfortable with what you're actually going there. So the point is that as you actually have different workloads come in there, we'll help you workload it. And basically before we have that conversation, we'll have a very deep conversation. The one thing that I also would say that separates us a lot is that we have a very business-like approach where we take the business objectives and we map them to technology, and at that point, it's an execution. Junior,
Yeah.
you want to join?
Here.
Okay.
And that goes back to that, remember that whole pillars of software quality? So again, we're going to challenge your workloads to make sure that they're adhering to all of that functionality.
Very cool, thanks.
Yeah,
I think we got,
okay.
Hi,
Hey.
I work for a CSP partner, and we generally deal with small to medium-sized businesses. So the question is there a minimum criteria for a project where we can engage FastTrack, whether that's based around user count or?
So if you're a CSP, you can nominate your customer on behalf of your customer, and if you're a CSP, you can actually, we'll work with them. So the main thing is if you're an EA, there is a minimum amount that we expect every month that you would actually hit in terms of revenue. But just for the particular business scenario that you talked about, that niche solution you're in, we're also have opened up support for that too as well. So basically, think of it like a small, medium, large T-shirt, different customer scenarios and business consumers. We're going to work with you.
So there's no minimum of 50 users at least, or we can't engage you guys?
So when you say users, are you talking about Office 365 or where?
Azure migrations. So if we've got a client that want to move to the cloud, they've got XYZ servers, but they're a 50-user organization. Is there a minimum criteria?
So we basically look at what is the expected projected growth of that particular consumption pattern, but also in addition, what is actually is it a real project, or is it sort of like, how would I say, a greenfield or a dev test? We'll just look and see, figure out right there. But from what you're talking about right now, that's something that we can definitely engage, especially if you're a CSP, because we're very, very, very eager to talk and work with that community.
Yeah, that's what
Okay,
I was gonna say.
thanks.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
My question has to do with the WAP servers. I didn't see web application as a part of your presentation, so is that a part of FastTrack, or is that a customized implementation?
You said the WAF, sir?
Yeah, the WAP.
Yeah,
Web
with application gateways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we facilitate for that? Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that's all part of
Yeah.
it.
Okay, very good.
We
We
didn't
already have Azure implemented, but we're looking at, of course, growing
Okay.
our space. So FastTrack might be something that will get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good solution.
Why don't you visit us by our booth, and we could probably talk to you
Come to
about
the
it.
booth. Yeah. Way back? Yep.
With the with the nomination process,
Where's that come
are there reasons why a company shouldn't go that path? Do you do it just so you could queue, appropriate, inappropriate? Why do we have that nomination instead of someone just being able to set up? Are there use cases that don't apply to FastTrack?
So the reason why we do the nomination process is a couple bowlfuls. Yes, there is a process. We want to make sure, first of all, that you're the right fit and we're the right fit for you. What exactly is the engagement model? And then also, to be honest with you, can we take everybody that's out there? No. But we would like to get at least people that are ready to engage. The problem a lot of times is that if we have open doors, some people say, yes, I'm ready to engage today, but maybe I'm not ready to execute today. 90 days, 120 days, and then the queue builds up. So what we're trying to do is from the point of nomination, we expect our customers to be ready to execute within 30 days to get onboarded and start working with an engineer and start actually getting either a knowledge transfer, Azure solution review, and then execute with maybe some type of workload deployment.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The key thing is that you have a real project. And again, if it's not a real project, if it's just you trying to explore Azure features, again, there's other teams that we can introduce you to that'll help that. But this is when, like I mentioned earlier, the stakes are high. You got some uncertainty about your design going forward, and you just want to have that design blessed and certified.
Well, I was just asking just to really understand, because I work for a bank, so we have many layers of people conservative that could slow things down. So we haven't engaged FastTrack yet, but it might be something we're moving forward to with a specific Azure project.
Yeah,
I-
let's chat about it. Come to the booth, and
Yeah.
we can talk about it in more detail.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sir?
Right here? Yeah.
Yeah, so two things. I'm looking at moving 3 data centers into Azure. So we're
Nice.
doing some proof of concepts. Junior's actually helping us with site recovery right now.
Got it. Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to understand, like, we got this engagement, in a hurry, so to speak, through our account manager, right? If you were to engage you guys in other such endeavors, meaning, we want to do proof of concepts, a couple of proof of concepts before we move the full workload, so to speak, right? So if you were to engage you guys in other proof of concepts, can we do that? And
Yeah.
do I have to go
Yes.
through the same
Yeah,
process?
Yeah, yeah. So you're gonna say, hey, we're trying to do X. We will help you with that design. As far as the POC, once you have that roadmap, we'll work with you to POC that,
Got it.
so that you can validate that it's gonna meet your business objectives.
Now, so I don't know if this is in scope for you guys, so, bear with me. So we've already gone into Office 365, we've set some things up. If you wanted to do a review of best practices, is that something that you guys would do for Office 365?
Not for Office 365.
No.
Yeah, there's a whole other fast-track team,
There's a whole lot of FastTrack teams.
365, that you should engage.
Okay.
And yep.
That's a very good distinction. There's another
Yep.
group. Yeah, but thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
One
Oh,
last
there we
question.
go. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
What is the difference functionally between the FastTrack team and having a DSC for Azure?
Yeah, your
The
DSC
dedicated
is
support engineer.
Yeah, so that's coming from your Premier contract, right? So that is a support function. We don't do support, right? So we're pretty much at the beginning of your project to help you validate and design what you want to do and deploy as a workload. Your DSC being there, once it is fully deployed, he's going to help you with that ongoing operation.
Also, if I can add one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
With some of the fast-track customers that we have, especially within DoD, we've actually, because we're one Microsoft, we've actually engaged with them a lot to say, okay, while we're doing a deployment right there, they're part of the actual conversation, and they are a lot of times they're the eyes and ears and boots on the ground. So where we cannot touch or we can't see, they can go out and do this and work with you. And then when we actually have remediation, they will also take that. And by the way, your DSCs, they have a lot of pride in making sure that your mission succeeds. So basically at that point, once again, it's like a baton. You know, one group to another group, we're making sure that your program is successful in Azure.
Yep. And don't forget your T-shirt.
Hey, T-shirts, guys.
Yeah, everybody's walking away. Back there, go ahead.
Yeah, one small question regarding support in Europe. FastTrack support in Europe.
Yeah, we support Western Europe.
Yeah, we have a team in Europe.
Yep. We're a global team.
Yep.
Okay, so go through our Tom.
Excuse me?
Technical account, through our technical account manager.
Yes.
Yeah, they should be fully aware of the program. Tell them you came to this session, you're interested in FastTrack for Azure, and they'll walk you through the process and get you
Great,
set up.
thanks.
Ask for Junior.
We actually got some of our European team at our booth, so if you want to stop by, they'll be happy to help you.
Hey, you asked a question. Come get your T-shirt, man.
No one wants T-shirts. That's great.
Come on up.
Okay, is that it?
Yep.
All right, we hope you guys enjoyed the session. Hopefully it was knowledgeable. And enjoy the rest of MS
All right,
Ignite.
have a large.
Thanks a lot for attending.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.